Hello everyone and welcome back to the channel. In today's video, I would like to share with you a new story centered around Hùng and Hoài Ca, along with an unexpected crisis that suddenly strikes CEO Hoài. Hoài has been wrongfully accused in a serious case. He is alleged to have sold livestock feed that failed to meet quality and hygiene standards, causing a large farm's pig herd to fall gravely ill and die in large numbers. As all suspicions begin to point toward Hoài, and as the situation grows increasingly tense and spirals beyond control, can Hùng, with his professional experience in the field, gradually uncover the truth and help clear Hoài name? Please stay with us and follow the story throughout today's video. That evening, Hùng and Hoài Ca's small home felt calmer than usual. The night passed slowly and gently, so different from the busy days before. The soft glow of the lights spread across the room, wrapping everything in a familiar, comforting warmth. After a long day, the couple finally had time to sit together. No rush, no pressure. Hoài Ca sat nearby, quietly folding clothes. She smoothed each garment carefully before stacking it neatly, her movements steady and habitual, as if ingrained over time. As she worked, she casually told Hùng about ordinary things from her day, small errands, trivial stories with no clear beginning or end. Her voice was gentle, free of worry, simply wanting to share. Hùng sat across from her listening. After exhausting shifts and stressful hours at work, this was the rare moment when he could truly relax. The sharp, guarded look he usually wore on duty was gone, replaced by a calm, steady expression. From time to time, he responded with a faint smile or a brief comment, small gestures, but enough for Hoài Ca to know he was paying attention to every word. The atmosphere in the house was peaceful, as if all fatigue had been temporarily left outside the door. But that tranquility did not last long. Suddenly, Hoài Ca's phone vibrated. The sound was not loud, yet it echoed clearly in the quiet room. She paused, her hands stopping mid-motion, then reached for the phone. When she saw the caller's name on the screen, she froze for a brief moment. It was Litu San. A vague sense of unease rose in her chest. Without thinking further, Hoài Ca quickly answered the call. The moment Litu San's voice came through the line, she knew something was wrong. Litu San could barely hold herself together. Her voice was choked and trembling, mixed with quiet sobs. She spoke while crying, her words disjointed but filled with panic. Hoài company was facing a very serious situation. The farming partner had officially filed a lawsuit, accusing Hoài of selling feed that did not meet hygiene standards, leading to severe illness and mass deaths among the pigs at their farm. Everything had happened far too quickly, beyond anyone's expectations. Litu San said she was completely overwhelmed, not knowing how to handle the situation. Everything seemed to be pushing Hoài into a disadvantageous position as suspicions continued to pile up. At that moment, Hoài had already been summoned by the police for questioning, and the situation remained unclear. On Hoài Ca's end of the line, she stood silently. Her hand tightened around the phone, her fingers trembling slightly. Every word Litu San spoke weighed heavily on her chest, making it harder to breathe. She could not interrupt, only listened quietly as anxiety slowly spread within her. Hoài Ca turned to look at Hùng. Her eyes were filled with unease and fear. With just a brief glance, Hùng understood that this was no simple matter. His expression hardened as he focused intently on the words coming from the phone. King, sitting nearby, also sensed the shift in atmosphere. He said nothing, but his face grew tense. The house, once calm and warm, suddenly sank into a heavy, suffocating silence. The call continued, but the peaceful evening was already gone. Worry had begun to take shape, signaling the start of a turbulent chain of events that was slowly unfolding. But in complete contrast to the confusion that had settled over the house, Hùng remained unusually calm. While Hoài Ca was still struggling to steady herself after the phone call, and Kang sat silently with a tense expression, Hùng had already begun to rein in his emotions. Years of working in law enforcement had trained him not to let himself be swept away by initial information, especially in cases that had yet to be clarified. Hùng understood clearly that a serious incident like this could never be judged based on a one-sided account. Questions were already forming naturally in his mind, but he did not voice them right away. At this moment, the most important thing was not panic, but keeping everyone around him calm. He gently placed a hand on Hoài Ca's shoulder, his voice low and steady. Hùng told her not to worry too much, and certainly not to let her thoughts drift toward negative conclusions while everything was still under investigation. It was just a simple sentence, yet it was enough for Hoài Ca to feel the firmness and stability in her husband. The anxiety in her eyes slowly softened, even though unease still lingered in her heart. Hùng then took the phone and spoke directly with Tiu-san. His voice was neither raised nor hurried. Each word was delivered slowly and clearly. He advised Tiu-san to remain calm, to take care of herself first, and not to allow emotions to take control. He emphasized that in cases involving legal matters and investigations, the truth can only be revealed when everything is examined objectively. His words were not promises, but reassurance, giving Tiu-san reason to believe that the situation was not yet beyond saving. When the call ended, the house fell silent again. This time, however, the silence no longer felt as heavy as before. Hùng sat quietly, thinking for a long while. In his mind, he began piecing together everything he had just heard. He did not rush to any conclusions, but his professional instincts told him that there were still many things left unsaid in this case. The very next day, Hùng proactively contacted a lawyer he knew well, someone he had worked with on several previous cases, who understood Hung's approach and had solid experience in economic and corporate cases. After a brief phone discussion, they agreed to go together to the detention facility to meet Hai in person. On the way there, Hùng spoke very little. He kept his mind fully focused on what lay ahead. For him, meeting the person directly involved was always the fastest way to assess the situation. He knew that only by hearing Hai's account firsthand, observing his demeanor, his responses, and even the smallest details, could he begin to grasp the true nature of the matter. When Hai saw Hùng again, he could not hide the exhaustion written all over his face. In such a short time, he had visibly lost weight. His face was gaunt, his skin dull, and his eyes revealed clear signs of tension and anxiety. Though he tried to remain composed, it was impossible to miss the immense pressure he was carrying. Hai slowly recounted the entire sequence of events from beginning to end. He described each stage of the livestock feed supply process in detail, from the sourcing of raw materials, to the production procedures, to the quality inspections conducted before the products were released to the market. Hai stated that everything had been done in accordance with regulations, with complete documentation and necessary certifications. He never expected the situation to take such a drastic turn. According to Hai, the trouble began when the partners suddenly reported that pigs at their farm had shown signs of severe illness and then died in large numbers. Before he even had the chance to thoroughly review the entire process, a formal complaint had already been filed. Everything happened too fast, leaving him no time to react. Throughout Hai's account, Hùng rarely interrupted. He listened carefully, his gaze focused, mentally noting important details. With years of investigative experience, Hùng knew that not only the content of what was said, but also the manner in which a story was told, could reveal a great deal. After the meeting, Hùng and the lawyer reviewed the relevant documents together. Invoices, inspection certificates, delivery timelines, everything was carefully cross-checked. The more they examined the materials, the more Hùng sensed that certain aspects did not fully add up. Some details in the paperwork did not align perfectly with the actual sequence of events, and several timelines appeared to lack complete clarification. Hùng did not rush to draw conclusions, but a clearer line of reasoning was beginning to take shape in his mind. With the lawyer's support, he proceeded with the necessary procedures to post bail for Hoài, allowing him to be temporarily released pending further investigation. This decision was not driven solely by personal ties, but also by the professional doubts Hùng was increasingly aware of. Hoài was temporarily released from detention, but the case was far from over. The questions in Hung's mind remained unanswered, and he knew that this was only the first step in uncovering the truth. Not stopping at the initial suspicions, Hùng quickly joined Hoài and several trusted associates to begin on-site verification at the farm where the incident had occurred. To Hùng, documents and statements were only part of the picture. The scene itself was where the truth spoke most clearly. He knew that only by seeing everything with his own eyes and examining each detail firsthand could the reality gradually come into focus. When the group arrived at the farm, the sight before them was deeply unsettling. Dead pigs lay scattered throughout the pens. Some had already gone stiff, while others were still convulsing before death. The air was heavy, filled with a foul stench that made everyone uncomfortable. Workers stood silently, their faces marked by exhaustion and helplessness. The losses this time were simply too great, far beyond anything they had experienced before. Hoài walked slowly through the familiar barns, places that once represented years of dedication and hard work by countless people. Seeing the pigs lying lifeless everywhere, he could not hide his pain. This was not only a financial loss, but also a devastating blow to the reputation and integrity he had spent years building. In his eyes, resentment mixed with helplessness, yet he forced himself to remain composed in order to cooperate with Hùng in uncovering the truth. Hùng observed everything carefully. He overlooked nothing, from the layout of the barns and feeding troughs to the feed storage areas. Right there at the site, he requested a full inspection of the entire batch of feed supplied by Hoài company. Samples were carefully sealed and sent for testing in strict accordance with procedure. The test results were returned quickly. All feed samples met quality standards. No signs of toxins were found, no foreign substances detected, and no hygiene regulations were violated. The data and technical indicators were clearly documented in the report, completely contradicting the initial accusations made by the partner. This finding made Hùng even more certain that the cause could not lie with the feed. From his investigative experience, he knew that once a hypothesis was ruled out, the correct direction would begin to emerge. He did not rush to a conclusion, but a clearer assessment was already forming in his mind. There had to be another factor, one operating quietly and previously overlooked. Expanding the scope of verification, Hùng ordered an inspection of the farm's entire water supply system. He paid particular attention to the groundwater source, an element that seemed ordinary, yet could become extremely dangerous if contaminated. Water samples were taken from multiple points: bore wells, storage tanks, and the pipelines leading into the animal enclosures. The inspection process was conducted with care and precision. No one spoke much. Everyone waited for the results in tense silence. When the analysis report was released, the suspicions in Hung's mind were gradually confirmed. The groundwater used by the farm had been contaminated with pesticides at levels exceeding permitted limits. With this result, the pieces of the puzzle began to align more clearly. Hùng ordered a survey of the surrounding area and quickly identified the source. Nearby was a large orchard where pesticides had recently been sprayed heavily on durian trees. The excess chemicals, improperly handled, had seeped deep into the soil and over time spread into the underground water system. That contaminated water source happened to be the farm's primary supply. The pesticides traveled through the water system, flowing directly into the pigs' drinking troughs. It was not an immediate effect, but a gradual accumulation, one severe enough to cause serious poisoning. At this point, the truth had become unmistakably clear. The pigs had not died from contaminated feed, but from pesticide-laced drinking water. A hidden cause, difficult to detect, yet devastating in its consequences. When this conclusion was officially presented, Hai stood still for a moment, stunned. All the resentment, tension, and pressure he had endured over this period finally had an answer. The accusations that had weighed heavily on him were gradually lifted. Hai's company was formally cleared of wrongdoing, its reputation restored, and all previous false allegations were dismissed in accordance with the investigation's findings. Hai remained standing, taking a deep breath. It was not only relief after a storm had passed, but also the profound feeling of justice being restored after days of suspicion and doubt had surrounded him. After everything was finally brought to light, Hai sought out Hùng. The meeting was neither loud nor ostentatious, just a quiet, ordinary moment between two men who had gone through an intensely pressurized period together. The moment he faced Hùng, Hai could no longer hold back his emotions. His voice dropped, his eyes reddened, and the words of thanks he spoke were not polite formalities, but came straight from the depths of his heart. Hai said that if Hùng had not been clear-headed enough to resist believing the initial accusations, if he had not been determined to pursue the truth to the very end, then by now Hai might have been carrying an undeserved injustice. It would not only have meant financial loss, but also the destruction of his reputation, his credibility, and the values he had spent years building. To Hai, Hung's presence during that time had been like a rare pillar of support, standing firm when everything else seemed to be collapsing. Yet in the face of those deeply emotional words of gratitude, Hùng merely shook his head lightly. He did not take credit, nor did he see what he had done as anything extraordinary. His voice remained steady and unhurried, carrying the familiar composure of someone long accustomed to navigating the boundaries between right and wrong. Hùng said that it was simply his responsibility as someone in the field, what he was obligated to do when standing before a case that had not yet been clarified. Hùng did not dwell on merit or contribution. Instead, he gently reminded Hai of something far more important. He said that after all the turbulence, what Hai needed to do was not only continue his work, but also live with greater integrity and learn to cherish the people standing beside him. Especially Lytutien, the one who had silently endured, worried, and remained by his side through the darkest days, when suspicion surrounded him and all pressure weighed down upon him. Those words were not spoken as a lesson, but as a sincere reminder. Hai listened and remained silent for a long time. He understood that while he had been caught in the whirlwind of events, certain important values had been pushed aside by fear and pressure. And that reminder made him feel even more deeply the weight of everything he had just lived through. Elsewhere, Lytutien quietly wiped away her tears when she learned that Hai had officially been cleared of all charges. She did not cry out loud. Only silent tears fell, carrying with them all the anxiety, fear, and tension she had forced herself to suppress for so many days. For the first time in a long while, she could finally breathe freely. The sleepless nights, the anxious waiting for phone calls, the moments of uncertainty about what tomorrow might bring, all of it seemed to be released at once. Lytutien sat quietly, allowing that sense of relief to slowly spread through her heart. Without needing to say it aloud, she knew she had passed through a period that, even in hindsight, would still make her shudder. In that moment, the images of Hùng and Hoài Ca appeared clearly in Tu San's thoughts. She understood that without Hung's calm judgment, steadiness, and fairness, and without Hoài Ca's quiet support behind him, everything might have taken a completely different turn. The gratitude she felt was not loud or displayed, but it became something deeply rooted, something she would never forget. The story comes to a close, yet what it leaves behind does not easily fade. Its echoes remain, quietly lingering in the thoughts of everyone involved. It is a story about trust in the truth, in people, and in rightful values that are sometimes obscured by misunderstanding and pressure. It is also a story about justice, something that does not exist on its own, but requires people who are patient enough, clear-headed enough, and brave enough to pursue it to the very end. And above all, it is a story about those who stand behind the scenes, quietly fulfilling their responsibilities, without the need for praise, asking only that the truth be protected exactly as it is.
Xin chào tất cả mọi người đã quay trở lại với kênh của mình. Bây giờ mình đang làm video. Mình đang sửa thumbnail như mọi người để cho nó khớp một tí. Cảm ơn mọi người đã theo dõi và ủng hộ cho video của mình nhé. Hôm nay thì mình làm kênh Tiểu Ca trước này, kênh Hoài Ca trước này. Nãy thì mình tính làm video live, xong mình không làm video live nữa. Tạm biệt mọi người.